Well, welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joining today is one of our two great dietitians. Amy is back, and this segment was made for me and for all of you out there. It's the benefits of beef. Finally, Amy, we're talking about something that I love dearly. And if you tell me that I have to portion this, I'm going to be very upset. So we're talking large portions here, right? I want all the good stuff about beef.
Yes, we're talking about all the good stuff about beef. Yes.
All right, fantastic. Well, in setting up the world of beef, beef is something you can mix into the diet. It's something you don't have to cut out. Feel like there's a big thing in the chicken world now of everything comes in chicken, but beef still has a lot of benefits out there. So for all the meat eaters, certainly they buy into it. But just on the average, where does the dietitian sit when it comes to the benefit of beef?
Yeah, so beef actually has a lot of really good nutrition. So as a dietitian, we're always looking for foods that are going to provide different nutrients into your diet. And, beef protein, I think, is probably the first one that comes to mind. So very important for muscle building, but then also for healing and recovery. So maybe if you're going through a surgery or you had some kind of injury, really important to be getting that protein so your body can rebuild and heal, but then also other things like iron, zinc, vitamin B12 and vitamin B6. A lot of people come to me with low iron levels. And so, beef is a really great way to get that into your diet.
All right, well, let's try to work it into your diet carefully here, starting with one of my favorite areas because it's just so easy to work with, ground beef and how it's made. It's tricky here. There's a trick to this, but where do we stand on ground beef and using that?
So ground beef you can buy at different fat levels. And so that's something I talk with customers a lot about, especially if I have somebody maybe on a heart healthy diet. One of the things we try to watch and minimize intake of on a heart healthy diet is saturated fat, which is found mostly in animal products. So then they naturally think, okay, well, I can't have, something like ground beef in my diet. And that's where it's really important to just pay attention to what you're buying. So with your ground beef, it comes in those different fat levels. So buying the leaner choices. So like, for example, with ground beef, they'll list it as like 90-10 or 93-7. So a product like that would be 10% fat on the 90-10. So that's going to be a much leaner or lower fat option than say an 80-20, which is 20% fat. So that'll be a higher fat option. So, if you're really watching that saturated fat intake, that's a really easy place to control that and select that leaner option with the, 90-10, 93-7.
Yeah, I think if you look for it, it can be discouraging to hear, that you should cut some meat out of your diet, but to find a way to work it in at a lean rate, it can work out pretty good. And you still need to get the nutrients into your diet. So we see a lot of a lot of supplements out there and stuff, but beef still can fit. You had already mentioned a little bit about the protein and iron, but how much of it per week do you need to work into your diet to make it worth your while if you're concerned on the protein or concerned on the iron and zinc side of things?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think that is probably going to differ for each person. I don't know that we have a set recommendation of how many times per week. That might be something to have a one-on-one conversation about just to see, how much you're eating and how we can fit that into your diet. Protein, obviously, we want to be eating at every meal, but that protein doesn't always necessarily have to come from beef. There's lots of different foods that provide that. So I don't have a real specific answer on that one, but
Hey, I
it's a
like
good
stumping you.
starting point of a conversation with your dietitian.
Perfect. Wait, see, we know what we're talking about here. All right. Can I eat beef on a heart healthy diet? Please say yes.
Yes. So as I mentioned with the ground beef, going with those, but you don't just have to stick to the ground beef option. So if you're thinking, I want to throw some steaks on the grill this weekend, you can still do that as part of a heart healthy diet. So just again, looking for those lower fat cuts, looking for things like loin. So sirloin is a great option. It's a lower fat option. Flank steak is another one that's a good option. So, definitely trying to choose the lower fat cuts. Excuse me, I was tripping on my words there. Another thing that you can do, especially with, say, for example, a heart healthy diet, if you are trying to cut back on how much you're having, is you can combine it with other foods. So, for example, one thing I really love to do with ground beef, especially if I'm doing, tacos or a taco salad, is I will use half the amount of ground beef I normally use and then fill it the rest in with black beans. So black beans are going to have great fiber, which is good for helping lower cholesterol levels. And they're also going to have a little bit of protein. So that's a really great way to still have that beef in your diet, have a little bit less of it, and then pair it up with something that's also going to provide a little bit of protein and fiber. So little tricks like that. You could even mix ground beef with mushrooms if you're doing meatloaf or burgers. So different tricks like that, where maybe you're flipping the amounts that you would normally do and filling in with a plant-based food instead.
We mix our burger with green peppers and onions, and not that those things help it as much as doing maybe a black bean, but it's fun to get into that. If you haven't tried any of that yet, you need to. That's a really good idea there. When we are talking about leaner meats for cooking wise, do you need to be more careful because there is less fat? So I could see a burning point coming here if you're switching over to this type of diet. Like, I think you got to watch a little bit closer for cooking these things.
Yes, that's a really good point. So when you have a beef product that's a little bit lower fat, it can tend to get dried out faster than when you have the product with the higher fat. So, a couple different things, definitely watching your cooking times closely so that you're not overcooking it. But then other things you can do as well, adding marinades to the product. You could serve it with something, and that kind of gets us into some of the recipes that I provided. But, you can serve your meat with a topping like a sauce or a salsa. Again, that'll help impart some more moisture to it if it is, ends up getting a little bit drier during the cooking process.
And quickly on the seasonings, when you're out there choosing from the wide variety of seasonings, there's plenty of them out there. What are some things that we need to keep an eye on? Because we could take a very healthy piece of meat and turn it into a really bad piece of meat with some of these flavors.
Yes, I would say the main thing to watch out for is salt. So when you're looking at your pre-made seasoning blends, especially if you're somebody who's salt sensitive, or you're really trying to watch that sodium intake. Again, a heart healthy diet is a good example. And there's other reasons too that you might need to be watching your salt intake. So, just checking to see how much salt is in a product. And if it's too high, finding something that's going to be a lower salt alternative. You can always make your own seasonings just with different herbs instead of relying on one that's pre-made for you.
Well, we've got some fun recipes that I do want to get to, and one is a chimichurri sauce, which this just sounds delicious, like fresh.
Yeah, this is my favorite in the summer. This is my favorite thing to make and put on steak. So chimichurri sauce, it's fresh herbs. So, Italian parsley, cilantro, and oregano. And then you're just really if you want to make it yourself, you just throw it in a food processor with some garlic, olive oil, red wine vinegar, blend that up. It's beautiful in colors, this really rich green color. It's super fresh. And you can just put that right on top of your steak when you serve it, just for that kind of extra pop of flavor.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that mixture stuff that really kind of brings the flavors out. Or if you're looking for that new touch, if you're somebody who likes beef and you're like, man, I'm looking for a new way to prep this, these would work. Avocado melon salsa. This is quite the blend.
Yes, this one's a little bit different take. It's kind of more the idea of putting a salsa, but it's like a fresh fruit salsa. So it's going to incorporate, the recipe I provided has avocados, watermelon, onion, jalapeno for a little bit of a bite. Obviously, you can find lots of different fruit salsa recipes online if this combination isn't exactly what you would want to do. But again, it's just adding some color and extra flavor to that steak.
And then finally, there's a marinade that you have here, Greek marinade. This marinades are fun to play with too. It beats maybe some of the just typical salt blend ones that you get pre-made. So how do you work this marinade into your steak?
Yes, so this marinade, it's using kefir, which is a fermented dairy product. It's just a little bit different take on maybe some of the ones that you could get, pre-made on the shelf. This one I really liked with the Greek flavors, so something different than, the other two that I had presented. But again, it's just introducing some of those fresh herbs. What's nice about a marinade is that as you soak the meat in that marinade, it's really going to soak up the flavor, and it's really going to help it stay moist and not get dried out as you cook it. So just, another way to introduce flavor as you're prepping that meat.
Yeah, well, these are all great, great recipes, great ideas here as we get into the really meat and potatoes type of the season. Well, I guess that's not really. Summer's a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
Yes.
For me, it's still meat and potatoes, but that's a different story. If people want to learn more about some of the recipes we talked about, or just questions to work with the dietitians, how can they find you?
Best way is go to our website. All the recipes we talked about today are all taken right from Hy-Vee.com from that recipe section. And then to get in touch with a dietitian, if you go to Hy-Vee.com/health, there's a whole dietitian page. You can learn more about the services we offer. If you want some one-on-one help, you can get in touch with one of us.
Yeah. All right. Perfect, Amy. Thank you so much for the great information on meat, and not saying I have to totally cut it out, but I will be looking a little bit harder, at least when I pick out that ground beef.
Sounds good.